Thank you so much. And Hetty, we just pray that God will open the right doors for John and close the wrong ones. He's the Lord of our lives and our decisions. The reading is from page 1064, but it's also up there behind me. Today's reading is about how Jesus changes water into wine from John's Gospel, the 2nd chapter. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Caroline. And now Peter is going to come and share what God has given him about this passage. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, St. Peter's. Oh, I've got a microphone here. Thank you, St. Peter's. Yeah. No, that's better. That's on. It was off before. There's mute and not mute, but I have to look at my belt to see what it says. Have you ever had a drink that was so good you thought it might be addictive? Not just a drink that's ended an acute thirst, but also a drink that's really made you come alive. Our coming into the influence of Jesus should have that effect on us. I want to do better this morning than I felt I did the last time I was here, which was Christmas Day. Then I was talking about the beginning of the book of John. Now we have the beginning of the start of Jesus' ministry described in the book of John. And I hope to excite you about what God says through this passage. So, we've got my first slide already, but we could even look at the passage, but that's fine. I want you to know that, let's looking at the passage. It says, on the 3rd day, a wedding took place. People say that might be harking back to the fact that Jesus rose from the dead on the 3rd day. There were people there. Jesus' mother was there, and the disciples were there. My talk on John 1 didn't catch the bit at the end of John 1 where Jesus calls his disciples, but you know those sorts of parties where you're not sure that you want to go, but you manage to get in enough with the people that you persuade them for your friends to come as well as you, and then you're really happy to be at that party. Well, this was one of those sorts of parties, and I want you to know, we can have the first word slide now, that Jesus and Cana are real. They appear both here in this passage, 1 to 11, but also a bit later on, a second sign of Jesus, chapter 4, verses 46 to 54. So Cana of Galilee is a real place. Jesus was a real person. Jesus was in Cana of Galilee. Now, I've got a second slide, which is not all words, but we can have the next slide, and there's a picture. And I've tried to model, roughly, this chap. I know that I'm now a bit thinner than that chap is. But that is me and my wife Irene, and behind us, Bishop Christopher. And this was at the end of February 2016, when we were on a diocesan pilgrimage to the Holy Land. So the Holy Land is real, I can tell you that because I've been there. Some people call it the fifth gospel, going to the Holy Land. And at the beginning of a diocesan pilgrimage to the Holy Land, they had heard that that Irene and I would be celebrating a wedding anniversary. We only have wedding anniversaries every 4 years because the 29th of February only comes every 4 years. But in February 2016, our wedding anniversary was coming. And this was a renewal of wedding vows that Bishop Christopher conducted for us at the end of February 2016, just before the 29th of February. The archaeologists might disagree with what they've got marked on the map now as Cana of Galilee is exactly the same place as the Cana of Galilee that the story that we're reading happened. But there definitely was a Cana of Galilee. There definitely is a Cana of Galilee. There definitely was a Jesus. There definitely is a Jesus. I need you to know that Jesus and Cana of Galilee are real. The next thing is that there was a sign here at Cana of Galilee. Now, I was lucky enough yesterday to be at a talk, a seminar, an exhibition at Trinity House, and that was a stupid thing. And I was kindly sent here it is, by a lady called Sharon Morton, some words that she's got that try and go through this story for children. Now, I know that the children have left, the young people have left, even Tony, who's been baptised today, they've left. But she's made these wonderful words, and we haven't got time for them all, because we're doing this quickly so that we can not only have a baptism before, but also have communion after. But if you know the tune, Here We Go Round the Mulberry Bush, her story of Jesus, the water into wine, includes some refrain words to that tune. So the first time the tune comes up, it says, let's celebrate, let's eat and drink, let's eat and drink, let's eat and drink, let's celebrate and eat and drink at the wedding in Cana town. Okay? So that was the first bit of the story. That's what's happening. And it goes on. It was a great party. They were eating special bread and drinking special drink. Because it was aimed at children, they didn't necessarily talk about it being wine, because the children don't necessarily always need to think about wine. Although in the Middle East, and certainly in that age, wine wasn't necessarily a drink to get drunk on. Wine was a drink that was fairly pure because it had come straight from grapeberry juice, and it had been fermented a bit, so it was not as poisonous as water that's been standing about for a long time would be. So this is special drink that we're looking forward to. But the story says, panic, the special drink has run out. There's no special drink left to drink. What should we do? Shall we panic? No, not yet. Mary, Jesus' mummy, is whispering something to Jesus. Let's be, Mary, Jesus' mummy, let's get ready to whisper in Jesus' ear. And Mary whispered to Jesus, it's your turn. Ready? And Jesus said, shook his head and said, it's not my time yet. But Mary knew Jesus very well. She was his mummy. She said to the servants, listen to Jesus and do what he says. So, we get this. We got another verse of the song. Listen to Jesus and do what he says, do what he says, do what he says. Listen to Jesus and do what he says at the wedding in Cana town. It's a bit topsy-turvy, this. Normally, children should be obeying their parents. But here, the parent is asking for their children to be obeyed. Mary says, listen to what Jesus says. It wasn't that long ago that Jesus was just a baby. But listen to this little one of mine, who was just a baby only at the beginning of chapter 1. But they do listen to what he says, and they wonder what's going to happen. So there were these great big giant water jars. So these are in verse 6, the sort of jars that they used for ceremonial washing. So about 80 to 120 litres a jar, all of these jars. And Jesus says, fill them up to the brim. Well, if you've got jars for washing, you wouldn't normally fill them up to the brim, but they're being obedient. Fill the jars up to the brim, up to the brim, up to the brim. Fill the jars up to the brim at the wedding in Cana town. So, all of this action's been going on. People tired yet? No, they've got to keep on filling the water jars. And then they're full. And when they're full, they can stop filling them up. They're a bit exhausted. Don't spill any. And now scoop some water. Take it to the party master. The party master tasted the water. He called the bridegroom, the man who got married over. What's he going to say? Have we done something awful? How are we feeling? Taste this. And the party master says, you should always serve the best wine first. You've saved the best wine till last. That's the wrong way round. So there's another bit of song. You have saved the best till last, the best till last, the best till last. You have saved the best till last at the wedding in Cana town. And not just a bit of special wine, but if there's about 150 bottles of wine in each jar, and there were 6 jars, that's about 900 bottles of wine. And I used to make wine, I'm an expert. Bottles of wine should contain 6 glasses of wine. If there are 900 sixes, that's what, 5,400 glasses of wine in these jars. That's a lot of wine. So the story shows us lots of things which are all important. Jesus loves parties. Jesus is the light of the world. God is the maker. He reminds us of creation. And he does something to make the creation of the water even better. Not just good, but very good. And then there was the upside downness of the action. Jesus will turn us upside down, upside down, upside down. Jesus will turn us upside down. And it was very good. If we go on to my next slide, this sign shows Jesus' glory. It was really good wine. Jesus is really glorious. It's more than just water that will slake a really bad thirst. This is tasty wine that will boost all of our sensations. That is the glory that Jesus is. But there's more to why this sign was here. And the last slide, because we're going on quickly, the signs are so that we can believe. And if you don't believe me, it says it in verse 11. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Jesus revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And sorry, Fran, I'm making you work back to that last slide. There's another reason that we know that this sign is so that we can believe in him, because right at the end, towards the end of John's Gospel, in John chapter 20, after he's shown us all of the signs in John's Gospel, he says in verses 30 and 31 of John chapter 20, Jesus performed many other signs in the pleasant presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But the ones written in this book are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. I hope that this has helped you with your belief. Let me just pray to finish. Jesus, thank you for coming for real to this world. Thank you for the signs and stories you left when you were here. Thank you that the purpose of your stories is that we may believe. We ask that you help us with our unbelief and our unbelief for the glory of your name. Amen.